Hey guys, it's been 4 years since I did a podcast. I just finished a record attempt on the Appalachian Trail like this month. Actually, no, last month, since it's the 1st of October now. So I'm like almost a full month out from being off the trail. And I came up with the idea of speaking to people who were involved in the attempt. And I've got with me today Corey Nunlist, who was a big part of my attempt and someone I really got to spend a lot of trail time with. So I just thought it'd be cool to hear basically Corey's version of his time and experience on the trail. So anyway, guys, that saves me doing a separate introduction. Yeah, this show is not sponsored by anybody. So I guess Corey, like I'd like to ask you like how you maybe I could just ask I think that when people ask you like introduce yourself, it's quite a kind of like where do I start? So maybe how did you find out about the Appalachian Trail in general, like ever?
Yeah. I grew up near Hanover, but I don't think I was actually aware of the trail as a 2,000 mile trail until my best friend after college wanted to hike it, and he invited me. He was in the Peace Corps, and he wanted to hike it when he got back from the Peace Corps. He read A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson, and he was enthralled by it and wanted to hike after the Peace Corps and invited me along. And I ended up going with him on that hike. And then, obviously, if you do, I met him in Hot Springs and went up to Katahdin, so I didn't do the whole thing that year. But obviously, if you're in it for that long, you become very, very well acquainted with the Appalachian Trail very quickly. So by then, by the time we got to Katahdin, I was hooked. I was in it.
So so your friend read Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. He was in the Marine Corps. He decided
Peace
like
Corps.
was it Peace Corps? Peace Corps. He was in the Peace Corps. What's it called? Peace Corps? What is that?
Yeah, it's an American. I think it's an American organization that they send volunteers to other countries to work on. I mean, yeah, without getting into it too deeply, it's like they work on projects in other countries, like either development projects or they teach English. My friend taught English in Ukraine for 2 years.
Okay.
That's a big one that they do, and yeah, I mean, it's kind of community building, but it's also sort of advancing America's interests in abroad. That's a pretty
Yeah.
old organization. I think Kennedy started it maybe like 50 years ago or so.
Okay. All right. So he did his time or did some time doing that, wanted to find something and then found the AT and then asked you if you wanted to. So hold on. Did he hike the whole trail?
He started, yeah, he liked the whole thing. I had just gotten a job, and so I told him, like, I'd love to, but I can't do it. But then that job didn't work out. So rather than having him wait for me or trying to catch up to him, I just met him after he had already started. I met him in Hot Springs.
Okay. And actually that's the actual trail name as well, Hot
That's
Springs.
a big part of how I got my trail name, yeah.
Okay. All right. So when like what age are you now and what age were you then?
I'm 43 now, and I was 20.
Oh wow. So like basically 20 years ago.
Yeah, it was classic right after college through hike, one of those.
Yeah. And how much of the trail did you do that year?
From Hot Springs to Katahdin, so it was like 1,900 miles.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, obviously I
It was
wasn't
like, it
listening.
was, I mean, it's not technically a through hike, so my through hiking friends would give me a hard time if I actually said I through hiked that year, but it was basically a through hike.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is actually it's more of a section hike, Corey. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
it's kind of a section hike.
Yeah,
I'm making fun here.
yeah, I
That was
know.
what I enjoyed about the trail is your ability to absorb my stupid jokes and just
So,
yeah, have fun. So then, so when was your next kind of connection with the trail after that?
so I thought that year that I would go back and finish those 270 miles or so immediately, and I didn't. But it was in my head that I wanted to do that at some point in 2015. So like 9 years later, I convinced my mom to like basically support me as a crew person. She just met me once a day. We would stay together at night, either camping out or I think we got maybe a couple motels, and then she'd meet me once during the day because she wanted to do her own thing. And then she'd we'd hang out for a little bit at lunchtime, and then we would meet at the end of the day. And so we did that for it was 10 days between Springer and Hot Springs in 2015.
Okay, so then
It's
you
like the finish of my first hike, basically.
yeah, okay, all right, and then because actually it's pretty cool if you share your story as well. So you also had the a record attempt yourself, like and have and so actually so where did you can carry on, I guess. What happened after that? What was your next
So yeah, I think after Jennifer Fardavis set the record in 2011, I think it was. I remember reading about it and thinking like, oh, that'd be a cool. I framed it in my head as my last competitive endeavor. So like in my 40s when I was done, I'm not I'm not even close to any sort of professional athlete or anything, but I love sports and games, and I'm a competitive person. So in my head, it was like, oh, okay, this will be the thing that I do to transition from my spunky 20s and 30s to my more mellow older ages. And so when I'm a teacher, I was a teacher for a while, and when the COVID shutdown happened, I had all the time all of a sudden to run around and kind of like work my mental and physical health. And I decided at that time, like, oh, this would be the time to do it. Like, I can prepare this year with my schedule. And so in 20, I decided in 2020, and then I tried it in 2021. My friend Kyler was my support person, and we started in Springer. I'm in late June, and we're cruising along. I don't know if cruising is the right word. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, but cruising along for 12 days, and then I got hurt, and we fell off the pace. But I wanted to finish it. It was about kind of doing it as fast as I could rather than I mean, I was thinking about the record all the time, but I still wanted to do it as fast as I could. And so we carried on until he had to go back to teaching. And I ended up in Katahdin after like 75 days or so. That was 2021. And then afterwards was like, I don't ever want to do that again. But then, as you well know, quickly decided that like, oh, I can do this better. I want to do this better. I want to try it again. And then so I tried again in 2024, but my heart wasn't in it. I mean, I did all my prep. All the prep went great. But when it came time to actually do the thing, I bailed after a day. So
Yeah, but
I got
I
it out of
think
my system.
I think the prep is like, to give you credit, is the prep was the entire Appalachian Trail. You know.
That was the culmination of the prep was to do the trail northbound, which that was great. It was like the kind of nostalgic, difficult, rewarding hike that I thought 2021 would be, really. So I did it northbound and then took a few weeks off, and then when it came time to try to go faster, I was done.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So and then
I've done kind of, I guess Warren Doyle would call them transits, right? I've done 3 transits of the Appalachian Trail over 20 years or so. And then
okay,
a lot of little things. I mean, in New Hampshire and Maine and with you. And
yeah. I actually added mine up the other day. Came to 11,000 something miles on the AT.
does that include all the training and practice and stuff?
That's Carol Sabay, right the way through to this current day. Every footstep on the trail was like about 11, and I can't remember the whatever it was, but it was over 11,000. So
11. Yeah. It's a lot of miles.
miles, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the bell going off in the background there. All right, cool. So that's your history. So you actually pretty much did the trail completed it 3 times, and it was north. Was it? I forgot to ask you. Was it northbound the first time?
All three were
Yeah,
north.
yeah, because you went from Hot Springs. Okay, so then I guess it kind of brings us on to like 24, 25. That was 24, wasn't it? Last year.
That was 24. Yeah, and I guess so. Just to kind of connect it to the two of us, in 2021 when I tried that attempt, I was watching your podcast just kind of as inspiration and a little bit of information too. Then when it came time when I decided to do it, I emailed you because I knew you were doing it too, and so that's the first time we ever communicated. And then I think we were probably aware of each other that year. And then the following year, I came out and paced you a little bit in Vermont, New Hampshire in 2022. And then, yeah, we've emailed back and forth a little bit in the years.
All right.
Paced you every once in a while when you came through Hanover area, usually.
Okay, so that's your experience on the Appalachian Trail, and this is kind of an egotistical podcast because I do want to shine a light on your areas of time that you spent with me and get into that. And I think that's the whole purpose of the series of podcasts that I'm going to create. So thanks for sharing that all in 13 minutes. But let's talk about me for the rest of the time.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, absolutely.
It's probably easier for you to talk about me than it is yourself anyway. That's how I find it is. But I find it quite easy to listen about myself, so we can do that.
Okay.
All right, I'd like to go back to when we first met, man, because like I remember just really kind of thinking that you were like, you weren't making the stereotypical comments and starting the stereotypical conversations, and you just really stuck out to me as like a cool individual, someone to have, yeah, like intellectual conversations that actually were stimulating. So yeah, like, can you remember? I mean, we spoke on email and stuff, but I mean, an email, yeah, it's just text messages on a computer or words. But so what was like, I think when was the first time you kind of met me on trail? What section of the trail was it?
I remember it was in Vermont. I found your crew. I was coming back from, I don't know, Boston or somewhere, maybe Washington, and um, found your crew on a kind of like, it was Chattagay. I don't know how to say that word, but Chattagay Road in Vermont, and it was sort of a um, bumpy road. But I pulled up and I immediately recognized a support crew. I don't think I had met Iceman or Steven Gerson, right?
Yeah, Stephen Grierson.
Yeah, so I pulled up and saw them there, and they were like, "Oh, you just missed him. He's up the trail." So I was like, "Oh, okay, I can catch up to him." So I caught up to you in the woods at like some evening in Vermont. It was right after you had kind of quit on yourself for a minute, and then got back on. And I said, "Hey, Captain," and you kind of turned around like, "Who the hell is that?" And then I introduced myself, and I think we just did a few miles, and I had to go back to my car. So I did a few miles to your next checkpoint, and then came back to my car.
So that was Vermont. Yeah, just for people listening, I pretty much got to is it Route 103 in Vermont, I
I think
think?
that's the one you said, yeah.
Yeah, and I just took my shoes off. I lay down in the crew vehicle. My mom had created a bed for herself, and I lay down and took my shoes off, or the other order took my shoes off, and then lay down and just said, I quit. I think it was like I didn't go back on trail for the rest of the day, but I did get back on trail the next day. So I would have seen you the next day when I spoke to Carl Meltzer a little bit, and he said, I remember he didn't talk about what I would regret. He talked about what I wouldn't regret, and he actually said, if you finish the trail, he called it the AT podium. You're like days ahead of second position on the AT podium, like, and if you finish the trail, you'll never regret that. And I always thought that was cool how he pointed out what I wouldn't regret instead of if you quit the trail, you're going to regret that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It's all
that
about framing.
inspired me. Huh?
It's all about framing.
Yeah, yeah. And so we met then, and then I think
And then I came out that same like a couple of days or a week or so later. I came out and Gene and I ran you up to Lake of the Clouds.
yeah, and I remember that climb. Is it Crawford Notch?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's an awesome climb, and just kind of you've already done Franconia to Crawford, so you've got
about
like
halfway
the
through the Whites.
yeah, yeah, you're halfway through the whites. And I mean, for me, that was fun. But I remember, like, so what I remember about that night is, first of all, I thought there was me and three others, but it was actually you and Gene. I don't know why I thought there was
There were
actually
other people.
three.
Well, Andrew Drummond met us at Lake of the Clouds, and another guy was down in the parking lot. I forget his name, but there were other people around. But Andrew Drummond did meet us at Lake of the Clouds. He was taking pictures, and then he hung out.
Yeah, yeah, yep. Okay. Like, yeah, I remember chatting to you and chatting to Gene. And so what do you remember from that encounter?
It was a beautiful. I mean, Gene was a nice guy. I never met him before. It was fun to talk to him. It was fun to kind of, that was the biggest section I'd done with you. So just kind of seeing how you do it, like how you're really into at the time, and I think kind of consistently most of the time you've done this. Like, don't talk to me about numbers and miles.
Oh,
But yeah, just having, I don't know, there's a different dynamic with three people than there is with two, because there's a lot of different, there's a lot more like conversation. Possibilities with three people. And there's just a really, I don't know, it was evening in the Appalachians and helping you kind of do your thing.
yeah.
It was just really neat. Yeah,
Can you remember anything about the weather and the time of day and stuff?
it was. We started probably at like what's it, 12 miles. We probably started at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We got to Lake of the Clouds like right at sunset, which was beautiful. Obviously, the weather was pretty nice. It was a little bit foggy by the time clouds were rolling in by the time we got up above tree line, but it was pretty nice. It was like not too hot, not too cold. It was really nice little section.
Yeah. And then actually, so yeah, I remember that night I slept at Lake of the Clouds hut. I think someone hiked in my sleeping bag.
That was me.
Oh, so you were carrying it up.
Yeah, and a pack full of stuff. I set up your
Yeah,
bed for you.
yeah, yeah. And I remember, man, having a terrible sleep that night because those huts are awesome, but they're so
Yeah,
humid and hot,
yeah.
you know?
And there's just
And
stuff going on all the time.
yeah, I was on the top bunk. I think, I don't know if there's two levels or three levels or even maybe, I don't know. I was on
Yeah.
the top bunk and I had to take like there was no sheet on the plastic mattress
Hmm.
and it was too hot to get in the sleeping bag. So
Sticky.
literally, I had to kind of have the sleeping bag over me, lying on this plastic mattress that I was sweating on, and just thinking, this is the worst sleep in the world. And then I got up, and Ted, I forget his name, Eric, Ted,
Yeah,
Eric?
yeah,
Yeah,
that was the other guy I was thinking of. Yeah.
he met me the next day. And I do remember Andrew Drummond shooting some photos as I came in, and that's the first time I'd ever met Andrew. He was yeah. As the years have gone on, I've had more contact and interactions with him. Cool. So where did you sleep that night? Where'd you go?
Gene and I hiked back down to the parking lot, not all the way back down the trail, but just took a. Steven drove my car to the parking lot at the bottom of the Lake of the Clouds. We had like a 3 mile hike, which was beautiful. It was like a little bit of light left from the sunset, and the moon was coming up, and the stars. It was. I just remember being like a really cool night. And Gene's a really nice guy, so it was fun to hike with him.
Yeah.
And then
So,
I just drove back to my parents' house in Lebanon.
and that's the last I saw you that year, I think. Yeah. So just for people listening, Dean Leeds is someone is in a is married with Veronica Leeds, and they have their son Vlad. And I stayed in 2023. They bought a place in Franconia. They moved from New York, and the house was empty for a while. And they said, because I'd met Gene in 22, and Veronica also did quite a lot of pacing with me through the Whites.
Yeah,
When I came back in 23 just to fill people in, I stayed at their house that they'd purchased in Franconia, and it was so awesome. And I had this like electric scooter, and I flew over from Thailand. And I remember I had a scooter in Thailand, so it was so cool to suddenly be in the Whites with an electric scooter. But I remember the steering was off, so I could turn it an inch to the left without the wheel moving, and an inch to the right without. So there was a 2 inch play before the wheel moved, and somehow the steering and I just risked it, and I used to drive to it was a Kinsman's Trail, and I fell in love with that trail. I don't know if you've done the side trail from Kinsman's.
I don't think so.
I love that trail, and yeah, it's a beautiful trail. So that's who Gene is. Thanks, Gene and Veronica and Vlad, for the hospitality. All right, so that's 22. It's quite a long time ago. And then we had some more interactions. You had your own hike in 24. You decided to go southbound and just wasn't feeling it. I think you probably found a lot of satisfaction in 24 going north and didn't really need the southern part of it. Yeah, that kind of brings us to this year. It's been 20 minutes we've been chatting for. We're just a month, less than a month off a 2025 record attempt on the AT, which was my 6th year but 7th start. I had 2 starts in 23 because of bad weather. So
Just
yeah,
to,
what was
just to give you a heads up, I'm gonna in probably a few minutes. I'm gonna go inside and plug my phone in while we talk. I think I'll just change venue, but I'll still be able to.
great?
Yeah.
That's cool. So yeah, you can do that anytime you want because yeah, this is just an unsponsored podcast, and I don't care. So what was your involvement with this attempt this year? Like, go through all of it. I mean, and also I'll interject and ask questions along the way. But how did you get involved this year?
So I stopped teaching 2 years ago and have been kind of living a very floaty life. And you asked me if I could come be your crew over the winter sometime, and I said I don't know what I'll be doing. I can't commit to that, but I'd like to come out, and I'll probably be able to come out at some point. And that's kind of what happened. Is I had some jobs over the summer, but then I knew that this one job was ending at the end of July, and I knew I was kind of keeping track of your start. And I was like, okay, well, if he makes it to Hanover, I'll be at my parents' house in Lebanon. So if he makes it to Hanover, I'll join up and be with him for what I can. And I remember just following your start, and just the way you went through Maine and New Hampshire was incredible. And then you fell and hurt yourself. I was like, well, maybe I won't be supporting him at all because he's going to stop after like a week or whatever. What day was that happened?
So I
6 or 7 or something.
yeah, it was like where I quit the trail. It was like, but basically it was the day before. It
Oh, it
was
was the
the
day
day.
before. The day before Mahuzik Notch, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
which was I was like, oh man, that's a rough time. Like he's struggling through what's that section called? The Mahusiks, I guess.
The Mahusix range, is it?
Yeah, yeah. I was like, oh man, he's struggling through the Mahusiks. Like this does not look good. And then I remember when you had that, like when you finished it, I was like, okay, he's gonna go to Grafton Notch. I'm sure that's where he'll stop. And you were going really slowly. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, we'll see. And then that night you continued. I was like, oh, maybe he's going to stop at Rattle Over Shelter. And then you went all the way up to Imp Shelter and stopped at like 11:30 or midnight. I was like, oh, okay, like he's back on. Like this is happening
Yeah.
still. And so I was sort of at my parents' house, you know, rearranging my life for a minute and keeping tabs on you. And just very impressed with how you went through Maine and New Hampshire. And then, saw you coming down the south side of Smarts Mountain, and we chatted a little bit. And you said you were tired that day, obviously, since you just spent 10 days going through Maine and New Hampshire. But that to my mind, you were looking really good. I mean, obviously tired, but looking really good. And then, so I did a few miles with you that day, and then came back out near Woodstock, and then was with you for like 4 days through Vermont, Massachusetts, and into Connecticut. And then I had to go do some other work things, and then came back out. I was keeping tabs on you and, trying to send you supportive messages without being too distracting. And came back out in Southern Virginia and was with you for like the last, I wrote it down somewhere, 4 or 5 days before Carver's Gap. And then I continued to hang out until Springer. I mean, I know this is about you, but, and I don't think I told you this. Oh, no, I did tell you after we got done with Springer, but it was like an awesome opportunity for me because I hadn't been back to Springer since I started in 2024. And in my head, I was always like, oh, this will be like, I'm going to be back here when I, finish my record breaking through hike. And then that never happened, but I got to have my own like cathartic 30-mile day from Neil Gap to Springer Mountain that day. It was so beautiful. But I was there for you, obviously, but also got to enjoy it myself too.
I think you invited me to come out and
Yeah,
do.
right. Yeah. I was like, this would be perfect for him. This is what he needs. I mean, and I know it would have been, kind of miserable and not exactly what you wanted, but you'll have your own cathartic hike some other day.
Yeah, yeah. It was in like actually out of what I did in comparison to what I could have done, I think I would have preferred to do that with you because I just kind of sat around
Yeah,
doing
I know. That's what I
nothing.
was kind of thinking. Is I bet you would have. I mean, it's hard in the moment, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But yeah. So I actually
So
do
yeah,
have.
about like 10 days total with you this past year, this past attempt. Yeah,
Yeah.
just to
So
recap.
so I've pulled up this table that I created. So I got to Grafton Notch at the end of day 6. It was a 39-mile day, 16 and a half hours, and I was going 2.3 miles an hour. But what happened was I fell when I came from Maine. It's Route 4, and that's where I quit last year because I didn't believe I could get the record going north. And what happened was I was running on some, you've got these wooden boards that go over mud. Well, like there was hardly any mud. It was so dry, and I was running on the boards regardless anyway because it's kind of fun and my legs were still fresh even after 6 days.
Yeah,
And as I went to step up onto the board, I think the front of my foot just caught the edge of the board because you kind of get lazy and you don't lift your feet up as high as you could. And it kind of sent me forwards in a Superman position. And what I did was I landed on a beautiful big soft area except for just one rock. And that one rock just went straight into my left quad. And it wasn't sharp enough to pierce the skin, but what it did do is it created a full-on dead leg scenario. By the end of the day, I pretty much couldn't walk. I was only limping. And Iceman came back up the trail from Grafton Notch, Main 26, and he was, "What's going on? You okay?" And I hobbled in, and I said to my mom and Iceman, I said, "Well, yeah, I mean, well that's it. It's over." I didn't set my alarm in the morning. I took way too long to get to bed that night, and I woke up at like 6, and by 6:30, I decided, okay, I'm gonna get on the trail. I had a guy called what's his name? I think it was Tim. If I don't have his name right when I interview him, it'll be fine because he can write me on that. And I actually had him have a tent because it's a 26-mile stretch through the Moosics, yeah, before the next road crossing. And I thought, there's no way I'm gonna risk like 26 miles when I can barely walk because I'm probably going to have to sleep in there somewhere. And that's what happened. I was super slow and I was limping, but I was in good spirits. That was the most important thing. And I made it through the whole Mahoosuc range. And actually, Mahoosuc Notch, the way I had to like climb rocks created all this like, because I couldn't bend my leg more than say, what is it, is it a 45-degree angle? I think 90. Yeah. Good thing you're a teacher.
that'll come up when we talk about math later.
Yeah, that's right, man. Oh yeah, we can talk about math. I still think I got the right numbers. But anyway, I couldn't bend my leg and like it forced me to bend my leg. And it kind of like, I mean, because I don't think it was muscle tear. I don't think the muscle fibers were torn, but they were definitely bruised. There's no denying that. And climbing through Mahoosuc Notch actually gave me more of a range of motion in my left leg. So after
That's
that, I
cool.
felt much better. And again, I was with Tim, and then he left me, and I came down to uh, what is the
Route
road
two,
there?
think it's Route 2.
Yeah, we came down to Route 2. Geez, what's that town called? Remind me.
Graph, Gorham.
Yeah, I came down to Gorham, felt super pumped. Like, saw this guy called uh what's his name? Austin Black. Super chilled out dude and strong, just around Western States. My friend Justin was there as well, up from Florida. And I was able to move again, and like, yeah, I went through. So that was the end of day 6 at Grafton Notch, and then to Imp Shelter was the end of day 7. I had 4 hours 15 minutes sleep that night, and just went on the next day.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
So you watched that and you thought, yeah, it's back on again. And when you joined us, like, you actually came with someone as well. Like, you want to talk about that and how you got to move your car around and stuff?
Yeah, so I had my car, or my friend's car, and I intended to just kind of run backwards to you and then back to my car, just trying to help out however I could and do a pacing or crewing or however I could help your mom too. But when I came down to that uh, first road crossing in Vermont that I was meeting you at, I think it was Route 12 maybe. There were some people there, and one of them was a through hiker that was coming through. I think even before he said his name, I was like, "You're struggle bus." I just have, in some ways, I have a terrible memory. But I don't know, things about the Appalachian Trail I tend to stick in my head better. And when Kyler and I hiked Maine in 2023, Kyler's my support guy, and when we we were camping out in between Caratunk and Monson, and there was a guy there that was struggle bus. I met him that summer 2 years ago.
Shores.
What's that? No, in between just camping out at Moxie.
Oh, yeah.
And then when I saw him in Vermont, I was like, "Oh, you're a struggle bus." Like we met. He didn't remember me, but we met. I was like, "We met a couple years ago," and he was like, "Oh, cool." So we talked, and then he was aware of you and your attempt and what you were doing, and super excited to see you. He was like, kid in a candy store. Like, oh, that's the wrong expression. Super excited to see you come through, and he was through hiker on a not strictly every white blaze path. And I was like, well, you can come. I think he was looking for a ride to Rutland. So I was like, oh, I can bring you to Rutland. It's going to be a while because I'm going to meet up with you, Kristian, a couple times before we get to Rutland. But we'll be in Rutland by the end of the day. So if you want to just tag along, and then I can drop you in Rutland at the end of the day or whatever. And I think he was just excited to be a part of it. And so he ended up coming along and kind of checking it out. And then by the end of that day, you camped out 2 miles north of Route 4, south of Route 4. And Struggle Bus and I ended up hiking your stuff in. He's a hiker and a fit guy, and I'm a hiker, and I kind of know what the attempt involves. And so we hiked in together and set up your tent, and you had apparently one of your best night's sleeps that night. And so we were really proud of ourselves for setting things up just the way you like it. And he really enjoyed being a part of that, and was sort of like, well, I'll kind of hang out as long as you'll have me. And so he and I took turns shuttling the car where I would drive and he would go with you, pace you a little bit, or he would drive and I would pace you a little bit, and help with, set up camp at the end of the day or whatever your group needed help with. And then when I had to go back to do my work in August, he ended up staying with you guys for 2 more weeks or so. So yeah, he was just really into the attempt and the effort and kind of you and what you were doing and the Appalachian Trail, and so he's a cool pickup. It was fun to spend time with him and get to know him. I mean, I met him a couple years ago, but I didn't really talk to him very much at all, and so it's just fun to meet him in person.
Yeah, that night that you set the tent up, I turned up with the hiker who hiked with me through the Mahoosics. Tim? Was it Tim?
Oh no, right, yeah, no, that was the second night. The first night it was just Struggle Bus and I. You came up by yourself, but then the second night at Prospect Run, yeah.
But yeah, that actually, no,
Was
I
that Tim?
remember now.
I forget his name, but I remember that guy. So he came and we drove my car and his truck up to the trailhead for Prospect Rock, and then he ran with you and went down to get his truck.
Where was that first?
Two nights in a row that you got such a good sleep from that tent setup.
Remind me, where was that first night? That
it was
Prospect Rock?
Winston Churchill shelter, maybe, or Churchill Scott shelter, or something like
that.
Yeah,
yeah, Churchill Scott.
Winston Churchill would not be a name of a shelter on the Appalachian Trail, but I think Churchill Scott, just south of the, kind of in between the two Rutland road crossings.
That was a 48-mile. No, what was that?
It was around. I think it was around 50 that day. It was just north of Killington. Maybe a better way of putting it.
Yeah. So that day, I started at 3:47 a.m. It was a 17-hour day on trail. It was 48.7 miles, 2.7 miles an hour, which is kind of slow.
Yeah, it's like I remember you saying, and I've done that section before too, and it's just a lot of like very short ups and downs. So I don't know. I talked to you about how well you just come through Maine and New Hampshire, and there's a little bit of a recovery involved there, and also it's like deceptively up and down in that section because
Yeah,
you're going east to west because whoever made the Appalachian Trail in that section really wanted to go to Killington, so instead of going south, they went west to
yeah,
Killington and
yeah.
over all day.
And at that point, I had a 56.9 mile lead on Tara.
Yeah.
I'd actually just grew my lead by 10.1 miles that day.
Oh, because she had a really short day that day, didn't she?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's how that day went. And
Feeling pretty good.
yeah, yeah, Connecticut River, North New Hampshire. Okay, so I'll tell you who was with me all day that day. And I
Oh,
know
right.
why I was slow as, huh?
I had forgotten that he was with. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, it was Bill Tidd. Yeah, is that right? Yeah. Yeah, and he was out with his wife in a super awesome camper van. And like actually that day I was struggling with the heat and I'd got my electrolytes. I was drinking Tailwind and yeah, you go Tailwind, you got to mention in my unsponsored podcast. So
Right. Yeah.
how do you
Dylan,
like
brought to
that?
you by.
Probably going to have 10 million listeners, and
Yeah.
all that publicity for you, Tailwind. You're welcome.
Yeah.
So that day, Bill Ted was out with me. I'd met him that morning. Like I said, 3:47 start. Like I started my watch at 3:47, which is pretty impressive. To give people some context, what happened the night before was it was terrible. I just got through obviously Hanover, and Hanover's like one of my favorite towns on the trail and just in general in life. I just like Hanover. It's a good place for me.
Right place.
Now, yeah. And what happened was I came in, I feel like I had a good day. I'd done a 52.8 mile day to get to the Connecticut River past Hanover. And I got in the roof tent, and you're not allowed to actually camp in the car park there. And we camped there in 23, I remember. And we should have learned our lesson anyway. The security guard came that night. I ate brisket from Big Fatty's Barbecue, which was delicious, beef brisket. And I think it's the only time I ever got my mum not to blend my food was when I ever had brisket. So
But you cut all the fatty parts out.
she made a mistake with that. I needed
Yeah.
that fat. Actually, I didn't lose any weight on the trail, so I probably didn't need it. But so what happened was that night, a security guard came over, shined his big torch on the roof tent, and told me to get up and get out of the roof tent. And my leg compression boots, which go for 1 hour, had stopped, so I'd been asleep for 1 hour. And I just remember him telling me to come down from the tent and just thinking, oh my gosh, am I gonna like, what really, And by the way, your videos off. Oh yeah, yeah. I'll carry on telling this story. And so I thought, and then eventually my mom had heard, and I heard her respond, and I just lay down and thought, oh, my mom can deal with this. Gun section, one of her strong points is just dealing with that kind of adversity with people and smoothing things out. Anyway, she told me later on, I did hear them in the background, but it took about 45 minutes because that guy had to call his superior. She explained how we were like doing this fundraiser for the Kill and Bear Center and going for a speed record attempt on the AT. He called his superior. They had to wait for him to come and give us the green light that we could camp there. And then finally, when I did get back to sleep, the next thing I heard was just a bunch of either young college students coming home after a party, or my mom's version was maybe they were just early morning rowers, but they would have had to be there at like pre 3 a.m. in the morning, so I don't believe they were rowers. I think they're just party kids. And so that was a terrible night's sleep. Then it was a hot day the next day. And my mum was putting, I think it was 1 scoop of Tailwind in when it was recommended two. And that 2 scoops of Tailwind was like 100 calories plus when you taste electrolytes and it kind of tastes weak, it doesn't taste right. So that was cool. I can see you again now. So that was like an indication that it wasn't strong enough. And me and Bill Tidd worked through it, and I told him I had no energy. And eventually, when we got my electrolyte balance right, I started to feel good again, and I came out of the low that I was in. And yeah, I came back, which was really good. So that night, I had an awesome night's sleep. So you guys really did. It was like it was my favorite night sleeping in a tent that night.
That's amazing. That was obviously, I think one of the ways that I can empathize with you in a way that's different to other people is I know like how important and also fixated on sleep you get in an attempt like that. And so hearing that you had slept really well just made me really happy.
Yeah, yeah. That I had a better night's sleep that night than at the Connecticut River just after New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So, so actually, what was your guys like sleep that night? Look, where did you sleep and where did Struggle?
We slept, talking about slept in the shelter. I set up my hammock right outside. We were a little bit set away from you. That's another thing. Like I didn't want to, because I know that especially in the hammock, I toss and turn a little bit, and so I didn't want to be next to you tossing and turning. And Struggle Bus had told me actually, because without getting too much into his story, he was in the military and he has bad dreams sometimes. And he had told me just that day, like yeah, sometimes I just like scream in my sleep. And I was like, okay, should we should have that not happen right next to Kristian. He'd be wake up in a ring. So yeah, to be just bring a little bit away, a little bit apart from you.
But like, tell me about that shelter. Like, you guys were like taking bets on if the shelter would have people in it, and what happened when you
Right,
turned
yeah.
up?
It's just, I think we were, I mean, it's, I guess a little bit, no, I mean, it's kind of like the north end of the bubble in, early August, like middle August in northern Vermont. I have to keep on switching the directions. And so we were just thinking there were going to be, we were taking bets on, we were betting each other on how many people we'd see. And I think my guess was like 3 or 4, and Struggle Bus was 5 or 6, and there were 0 people there, and no one was there. I think everyone probably either stays up on the top of Killington or goes into town at that particular crossing. So we had the place to ourselves. Struggle Bus, I think, said, what was his? I think maybe there were some mice, as there often are. So he, was dealing with that. But it was cool. I don't know, coming up to a shelter. I love the social aspect of the AT, but I also love coming up to a shelter and being like, oh, I got the whole place to myself in the middle of the woods. This is great. But I knew it would be good for you. I knew it would be good for you too, because just, have nobody around when you're going to bed and getting up is a really helpful thing, I think, for what you were doing.
So actually, I slept in that shelter back in 23 when I was going south. So oh yeah, I never really thought about that. So I actually did the same day in 23 that I did this year because I started at the Connecticut River and went all the way south. And yeah, you're right. It's kind of just rolling little hills. There's nothing really worthwhile. But I did start to have problems with my foot at that point because my foot was getting pushed into the shoe, and I believe I chose the wrong size shoes because I'd never tried the Mafate Speed 5, and I didn't have enough time to actually. I did 200 miles actually in the shoe, but what happened was 200 miles in a shoe over a period of a couple of weeks is nothing in comparison to 18 hours in a day. So anyway, if I would have had a US 11, I believe I wouldn't have had that problem. But by the time the shoe got sent out, it was too late. So yeah, I was suffering with my foot, I believe, that day as well. So that did slow my pace.
Are you able to? So when you have a day like you said that your days in 2023 and 2025 are essentially the same that day from the Connecticut River to the Churchill Scott Shelter, are you able to kind of compare how you felt on those two occasions, or is it too different because of all the other things that happened?
Hey, listen, I set this podcast up to ask you questions, man.
Yeah, no, I get to, it's about you. I get to ask you questions.
That's awesome. Actually, I'm really pleased you asked that because so yeah, like you brought up a whole sleep system, you and Struggle Bus, to get to that shelter. What is the name of that shelter?
I think it's Churchill Scott.
Churchill Scott.
I think so.
Yeah, okay. So I hiked up all that stuff myself in 23. And then you know how the next day is a pretty big stretch. I did that entire stretch with all that. I had my sleeping bag, my
Okay.
tent, my everything. So yeah, I remember and what happened was I came up to that shelter and I was also taking bets but with myself, wondering, actually I hope there's no one there, if I'm perfectly honest. And when I
Yeah.
got there, there was two young people, a male and a female, and they were really kind of quiet and low key. And I just said, hey guys, I'm going to be up early. I'll try not to disturb you as much as I can, but I will deflate my mat, and it's kind of a bit noisy. Yeah. And I slept in that shelter, and just when I got in, it started raining. And I remember hearing it on the tin roof. And it's so nice you've also told me a story of 6 of you hiking just before you come out of Virginia, I think, and you had that same experience.
Yeah, just being in a shelter with the rain is one of my favorite things.
Yeah. So I definitely struggled in 23 with the fact that it's not very far out from the vehicle, but there's nowhere nice to camp down there with the crew. So like I hiked in this heavy pack and And so when you guys did that for me and I got up there, my first reaction was, if the shelter's empty, I really want to sleep in the shelter. I never told you guys that. But then the tent was so awesome. And, I mean, again, it's not a sponsored podcast, but like Z-Packs did give me all the stuff, and you guys set up I think it was a duplex you guys set up.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and man, I had the best sleep because, not obviously just because the tent, but because you guys laid it out in a flat area. It was taut all the way around the edges. Yeah, it was really nice. I remember I was eating dinner and you give me a foot massage as well that night.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Struggle Bus was doing one foot, you were doing the other one. And then I remembered thinking, Corey's not that hot on foot massage.
No, yeah. Struggle Bus is like massage practice. He's a masseuse for like 4 or 5 years, but I'm not a good massager, masseuse.
Yeah, I can believe it. I was like, hold on a second, Struggle Bus, you're a masseuse? What?
So
So
good.
I was really happy that he came on board and I was having a good sleep. So yeah, it was a good night that night. I was in good spirits and it was nice.
So
Yeah.
I guess this kind of makes sense with my experience too, but like when you're thinking about comparisons between one thing and another, it's often nighttime and morning, and the day is kind of like are a little vague and fuzzy, but you're like, how did I sleep that night? How was the next morning? That's kind of how that's a lot of what you're comparing, I guess, from year to year.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But also, so looking back, I got to Churchill Scott Shelter in 10 days. So in 23, I got there in 11 days.
Yeah.
So I was one full day ahead of myself, and at that point, 56.9 miles ahead of the southbound record Terra.
And feeling quite good, I remember.
Yeah, I was feeling really good, and that record stayed the same the next day, and then I built on it right the way. Um, the highest I had on the record was 68.9 miles. That was on day. Let me just shrink the screen a little bit. Day 15, and it was a 57.2 mile day, 3.1 miles an hour. Actually did 18 hours, 37 minutes that day, and I got to Long Hill Road. I don't know, West Cornwall Road to Long Hill Road.
Just like into New York, maybe.
Could be. It
Yeah.
was after,
Yeah.
yeah, Connecticut, and so yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how I guess we spoke about like, then there was that point. What's your interpretation of because I also do have the other stats that are recorded is pretty much how much sleep that I got on trail, or how much trail time rather I had. And I regularly was doing 18-hour days and chucked in quite a few. I mean, I had like a 19-hour 33-minute day, an 18 almost 18 and a half hours a day, and then I had a 19-hour 55-minute day, and then after that I did a 37-mile, because I was kind of I yeah, whereas Tara kind of did her first plus 19-hour mile day was not until day 39. So I believe that, even though a lot of people say that she hardly slept on trail, yeah, okay, but I took it to another level and I took it way beyond what I should have. When did you first start to see like signs of, cracking? When did you start to see things like not really kind of going as they should for someone who's gonna set a record?
Because I mean, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, that stretch, you were just cruising along. And then when I came back out in Virginia, I think you were still well ahead of Tara's pace at that time, or at least her spot. And you had talked about how had started taking kind of 5 minute naps throughout the day, and that felt really good. And you were still doing. I think you even either matched or exceeded Tara's miles that day. So I was like, okay, you're still cruising along. The following day, I think the following day would have been into Damascus. In the morning, it seemed like it was going well, and then when you were coming into Damascus, it was still going okay, but you had slowed down a little bit, and you were talking about how tired you were, and you came into Damascus, and you just kind of slowed down at the end of the day. I mean, I still figured it would be okay, but the way you were talking was slightly different. Just about, I mean, about how tired you were, and about, I think you had brought up that day about how sometimes you think about, how sometimes you had thought about just like stopping where Tara stopped one night, getting a good night's sleep, and then just trying to match her like day after day. And you're like, I'm not really gonna do that, but it's just something I thought about. In hindsight, I was like, that's the kind of thing you think when you're like, I don't know, not starting to get desperate, or when you're starting to think like, how can I get more rest? Basically, it's a tough place to be when you got 10 days to go or whatever it was. So the day in Damascus, I would say like that, and the following morning. The following morning is when you, I think throughout that next day, you were struggling. Not the whole day, but in certain sections, you were just really kind of tired, and every once in a while, I noticed your leg kind of just buckle a little bit. That was the night you stayed in the same spot that Tara did, and then the next day was the day you stopped.
So just preceding that, so my lead on Terra was like, it came right the way down over a 10-day period from basically about 50 miles to about 30 miles. And I did like those 3 days that I did, which averaged over 19 and a half hours a day. So 19 hours, 33 minutes, 18 hours, 19 minutes, 19 hours, 55 minutes. I had, by the end of that 19 hour 55, like I'd gone 2.7 miles an hour. My lead was just under 30 miles. And then the next day, my lead dropped to 9.1 miles. Like
Yeah.
those, in my personal opinion, like those 3 days back to back took my average pace from just under 3 miles an hour to basically 2.4 miles an hour. And
Was it 2.4? Was that low? Your pace was, you said?
yeah, exactly. So I did 15 hours and 24 minutes. 37 miles of an average speed of 2.4 miles an hour.
So that's not moving time though. That's total time for the day.
That's total time. That's overall time. That's not moving time. So that includes, because I mean, you said yourself, what's killing you is eventually I got so tired. I just started having too many stops with the crew, and obviously my moving time was probably 3 miles an hour or something. It's not bad, my moving time, but it's just that the record attempt is about, your total time, of course. It's not about your moving time. So when you said I was talking different, do you kind of mean like not the way I sounded, but like my psyche kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah. Which I didn't think about it at the time. I didn't realize it, but afterwards I was like, oh, okay, that's when. I was going to ask you too, like, what is your perspective on when your mindset changed? And I was also, well, yeah, that question first.
Yeah, my mindset changed. I was coming in, it was before the priest. So I forget, so I'm into Virginia. Like what is it?
Priest is like a little bit south of Shannon, like I don't know, 100, like 50 to 100 miles south of Shenandoah, I think.
Yeah. So I just remember Shenandoah not feeling as cruisy as it should, because
Yeah.
in my mind, I was thinking, oh, I'm going to get to Shenandoah and like all this time, yeah, I'm an ultra marathon runner. I'm looking forward to just putting, because, part of my like desire for this attempt was put down some big days. I wanted to hit some 60-mile days and I did, but it never felt easy. And it shouldn't feel easy, but it never felt like I felt like I was overstretching myself, and I really believed I could do it, on some of the faster sections. So that never kind of happened, and that was a surprise. But there was a time that I came in to see the crew, and I just said, I'm taking more naps than I need to right now, and I need to have a big 20-minute nap. I'm really tired. So I think it was 20 before I went to sleep. I think I had a whole pint of Ben and Jerry's, so it could um so I didn't just like have it as I set off. I had it before I slept. I think it was a 20-minute nap. I remember Chris was there, Chris Stone. And then Chris, I said Chris Meltzer because Chris is Speed Goat's Carl Meltzer's sister. And then also Mark came out, Model 49, that day. And I said, after I had that 20-minute nap, I came out and my eyes were like red. I was really tired. And I just made eye contact with my mom and I said, yeah, I need more sleep. I need more sleep tonight. And I was starting to get obsessive about it because I was really aware that I felt I was taking myself over the edge, you know. Where was that? Again, it was the day preceding the priest. And I had a 45-mile day that day. So I tell you where it was. Port Clinton to Yellow Springs Village.
Oh yeah, Pennsylvania. When I remember your little Instagram videos through Pennsylvania, I mean, you were still going and you were cruising along, and that's what it takes, you know. But it's like clearly you were struggling just with the rocks and with sleep, and so it must have been, yeah, Port Clinton coming out of.
Yeah,
Wait, so that's north of the Priest, I think, by a few days.
it is. Sorry, if I said south, it's because I forgot I was going southbound. So yeah, so Yellow Springs Valley site is actually in Shenandoah, I think.
Okay.
I think so. And I remember there was a bunch of boy racers, like, like 100 or so people with the fast cars,
Yeah.
and and we pulled into this area, and Chris asked them, you guys going to be here for long? And they said, no, we're going to leave in about 20 minutes. So I came in that night. I did 45 miles that day when I should have actually, it was still a 50 mile, I had 50 miles lead, but I should have done 55 miles. There was an 8 or a 9 mile stretch.
Yeah, it's a pretty doable section.
Yeah, and I had like only 15 hours 40 minutes on trail. So it was a really bad day. And I remember thinking, like I made the decision to stop with the crew. And that day I'd had an argument with my mom because when I came out of having that sleep, and I said to my mom, I need more sleep time. I need to have 6 hours sleep. I need to catch up. She kind of said, well, don't tell me, tell the crew. And I thought I was really confused because I thought, well, Mark's just turned up. I don't really know who he is. Chris is here to help my mum because she's the crew chief. So it was this really difficult moment, I think, for both of us. She was really tired. I
Yeah.
was super tired. And she was overwhelmed as well because, Iceman wasn't there this year. So she had two new people to work with. And it was a difficult day. It wasn't just a moment. It strung out. My mum said that we weren't arguing, but for me, it was a full on argument. And we were going back and forth over the phone call. And I'd lost my motivation to carry on at the end of that day when I saw them. And I wanted to sleep, but it was too much sleep. I slept where these boy races were. We took way too much time getting ready for bed, maybe in over an hour. And then the next day I came in down to Thai River and went up to the priest and I quit. I didn't tell anyone. Probably this is the first time people have heard this, but I actually quit and I was going through the argument I had with my mom. I really don't enjoy this. I don't want to do this. And this isn't what I'm here for. And yeah, I'm not enjoying this. And I quit and forget about it. And I had 50 miles lead when I woke up that morning, a day almost. And I'm in that kind of frame of mind. So when I got ahead and I saw the crew, which was my mum and Chris, they totally talked me around and it was awesome. And I felt, oh, me and my mum have healed our relationship. It's the end of the argument. I was fully motivated and I was like, yeah, let's do this. But I think at that point, I'd gone too close to the edge of the sleep deprivation cliff and fully fell off. And yeah, I mean, I had so many 18-hour plus days.
So
So
you kind of rebounded from that experience, but you were still tired, obviously.
okay, so the next 3 days I did 58.5 miles, 59.5 miles, and 57.9 miles with a pace of 3.2 miles an hour, 3.5 miles an hour, and 3.2 miles an hour. And I maintained my build on Tara and I increased it by 3 miles over
Yeah.
those 2 days. And she was having good days herself at that point, you
Yeah.
know. So to build the lead. So yeah, but and that's where I felt, the beginnings of the end, you could say. And so maybe talk about like, how did you feel? Like, what did you feel your role was while you were there? Because, I mean, I don't want to answer the question for you, but for me, you were more than, you like were bringing some A game. As far as I'm concerned, and I'm kind of answering the question for you, but I'm going to let you speak now. But in my opinion, you knew what was needed to get the record because you'd been there, you understood what it's like to be involved in a record attempt. So what did you feel your role was and what were you contributing to the record attempts?
The beginning when I came out, not just to support you, but to support your mom. Yeah, like you said, I haven't been in the spots that you've been in, but I've been enough in it to know, and like I could empathize with you more than other people could um, in that setting. I knew that was part of it, as I could understand your perspective better than anyone else there at the time. But yeah, just to go out and to try to keep you moving and to try to like don't as gently as I could. Although I told you I was going to be meaner, I felt like I should have been meaner. But yeah, to try to keep you moving and not setting too long in crew stops. And I did laundry a couple of times for your mom, so trying to do little things like that to get her to be able to sleep a little bit more, carry stuff so you don't have to carry it. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not I'm not great at it. It's kind of how I am as a person in general. I'm not like an expert in anything, but I'm just sort of an all around. Like I'm well rounded, and so just try to put that well roundedness to support you and your mom basically, and Chris at the time.
What were some things that were frustrating that like we weren't doing or I as a runner wasn't doing? Like where did you feel any frustration? Like, well, Christian's not listening to me. I wish he would do this, or kind of.
No, I think my only like real frustration came at the end when I couldn't talk you into to getting up and moving again. That I just well, we'll probably talk about that in a minute. But up until that time, um, uh, well, actually, so after I left you in Connecticut, partly because I was sick that day, and I'm glad I didn't get you sick, but I was sick, and I got back to here where I came that night. I had like one of the worst night's sleeps I've ever had, and part of that was because I was sick. And part of it was like, oh, like I gotta like I have to communicate. Like they need to do this, they need to do this. Like they should like I wish I was there with them so I could tell them this. And it's not really it wasn't my thing at the time because I was off trail and who am I anyway. But one of the things was your mom needs more sleep. Like her and John at the time and Chris later, they should be like leapfrogging or scheduling it in a way that they can rest more because that's really important, especially for your mom. That was one of the things. And then another one was I felt you weren't eating enough, so I was like, you need to be more because you had your schedule. But you're anyone who is set out to break the record, they're going to be going harder than anyone's ever gone before. So they need to eat more than anyone's ever eaten before. So your calculations about like what Carol did or what Terry, like they're not good because A, they're not you, and B, they're not going to be as fast as the next record setter. So just I think those were the two big things. I feel like there was a third thing. Yeah, maybe not. But then when I came down to Virginia, I think it was like when I met you, it was right after the time that you were talking about where you kind of fell off and quit for a second, but then you had those 3 really strong days. So it was right in the middle of that I came back and you're like, okay, you're doing it, you're going strong, this is good. But there were just a lot of crew stops, and every time you have any crew stop, you're like, okay, this one will just be 5 minutes, but then 5 minutes turns into 12 minutes or whatever, and
Yeah.
and that adds up, and so that was a small frustration. Like you need to like just stop less, and then towards the last couple of days, uh, it was this is runnable. Like I understand where you were at and where anybody in that situation is at, but it's like this is flat and fairly smooth. Like you should be moving. And then I think actually, so I think the biggest you couldn't see this because I was behind you, and didn't happen very often, but every once in a while I'd be like, and those times were when you needed to be going. You needed to be going. I mean, any pace would be fine, but you need to be going. And instead, you were like, "Oh, I need to look at the profile." Or like, "Oh, I'm gonna put some music on." Or like, "I don't want music anymore." "Oh, I'm gonna call my friend." It was like phone related stuff. It's like that was frustrating. It was like, and I can't tell you like I don't want to set you off and have you go into like now you're pissed and I'm not doing my job because I'm just pissing you off, and that's not going to be good for your mental state. So I didn't really know what to say in those situations, except you might remember like, oh, like yeah, I can't remember if I think once in a while I'd be like, yeah, put your phone away, or like let's go, or something. I don't know. I trying to not be too overbearing about it, but those times were frustrating to me as a witness to what you were doing and what you were trying to do, like
Yeah.
phone related things.
Yeah. It's so
Fidget.
funny.
I think I called it fidgeting. Like you need to stop fidgeting.
Yeah, I think I've started to procrastinate, like like you say, fidgeting, doing things that were probably unnecessary, but I can't even remember that. But that's must have been like how tired I was and stuff. Did
Yeah.
like I want to ask you something as well, and thanks for answering those questions so honestly as well. And I'm not taking any offense. I want to hear, you know, the
Yeah.
I want to hear the real truth actually. Did you like, because there was one time that we were making this descent after we'd come off. I believe it was before I got to the dam.
Yeah. Wilbur Dam, Watauga Lake.
Yeah. So, and you said I'm going to run ahead and see the crew. Yeah, so that for me, like I remembered when I went north last year, I told you the story about that young through hiker who raced me up that
Yeah.
section? Yeah, and so that was really easy runnable trail. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't get smoother than that. But so
No.
that for me was one of the points where I like when I've spoken to my girlfriend about it, I said like I came to the end of myself. Like at that point, you probably can't see how I feel, but you can see my body language and stuff.
Yeah. And you were talking about it too at the time.
Yeah, like I literally kind of got to the point where, if I did run, it would have probably been slower than someone's walk. They could have walked past me. And that was the physical aspect. And then the other aspect was, it was like I'd even gone past tiredness. I was like delirious in my mind because I kind of stopped. I'd lost all competitive nature in my mind. I'd lost my reason for being there. And I kind of entered this place of calm, peaceful kind of moment. And I was like, I was in this lovely floaty place, and you went off ahead, and I was just in this really kind of relaxed place. And then when I got down, of course, I had a pint of Ben and Jerry's, and I think I had a longer sleep. And I remember my mum said she felt so bad like coming because I was snoring so deeply. I was in a deep sleep, and she tried me a few times, and then I think she sent Chris to wake me up. And I
Yeah,
just remember going off with um, Ian, right? And that was it. That was my last stretch with Ian. Um,
that was the day before.
Oh, was it? Was it? Okay, well, that was so close to like
But
what I
yeah,
had left.
you came in kind of late that night. I remember like that road crossing. You were taking longer. You were coming really tired, and you were leaving kind of bewildered, and yeah.
So, what was it like to see someone, like, in your opinion? I guess I just had to keep on moving. Yeah, what was your opinion? Like, what did I need to do? My opinion is like I'd got to the point of no return, like in terms of pace.
Yeah.
And also like purpose, because it's not just a physical thing, it's also a mental endeavor. Like, if you could, like, yeah, well, I suppose we can't change stuff, but like, what was I doing, what in your opinion was I doing wrong besides the fidgeting, and maybe besides my crew not getting enough sleep, and maybe having too much time at the road crossings? Is there any other things, like, if we're going to do this all again, like where you'd say, okay, change this, change that?
Well, I have some thoughts about that, but they're not for public consumption.
Okay, yeah, that's
But
cool.
I think another thing. I mean, I don't know if this is categorized as doing something wrong, but in terms of your thinking. And Sarah, when she came, because we talked about this, is like you were never as slow as you thought you were. It's like you just needed to keep moving on your feet because you were still going about 3 miles an hour. Like at worst, it was like 2.7 or 2.8 or something. It
Okay,
was
cool.
just a mindset of it. And you kept like I don't know, you wouldn't believe that, or you were in your own math world or whatever, but you couldn't accept that as truth.
Yeah. And like, how hard was that for you? Like looking at me thinking, wow, this guy's just like kind of not getting it. Because I definitely, like, out of all the people who came out, I really did value what you said and listen to what you said. But I guess I definitely found myself listening to what you said, but not acting on what you said. Like, for example, the road crossings just became ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where I lost my like overall pace. And
Yeah, and we would talk about it, like coming in, like in the middle of a section, and be like, "All right, this next, like, you should just go through this. You don't even stop at all. Just walk right through, grab a snack, and be like, yeah, yeah, like I should do that. I'll do it." And then, like, a mile before the road crossing, be like, "Actually, I'm just gonna take a little. I'm
yeah.
gonna take 5 minutes."
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I guess looking back on the experience, how long have we been chatting now? Let's have a look. I guess we can almost call it an end. An hour and 13. Yeah, cool, man. Okay, so let's wrap it up with, and then we can chat a little bit post recording as well. What's the summary?
Well, so just to go, because the end, I kind of wanted to. I feel like maybe I remember the things that I wrote down, but just recollections and stuff. But I guess when we got to Carver's Gap, you were. I don't know if there's anything that could have changed your mind, but I was thinking in that moment, like, man, like if only Tara or Carl were here and they could tell you, like, this is what it feels like. Like we felt like this. Like this is what it feels like. You have to get up and keep moving. Or like Rascal, I was like, I wish Rascal was here, and whatever magic she pulls out. I guess it's the relationship you have with your runner, sort of. But just like whatever your crew needs to pull out of you, I felt bad that we couldn't do that. And I also, you were talking about the numbers. I hope you at some point show people the page. You were like, I want to write this stuff down. Like, let's talk about the math here. And like, yeah, the page with just some random scribble on it. But and I wish I had those numbers for you because I was kind of processing it in the moment. I never had far out. Like I was using books different from the rest of your crew. But the actual numbers were you had 380 miles. You had
From Carver's Gap.
from Carver's Gap. Yeah, you had. So if you're going 3 miles an hour, which I think would have been fair for moving time. I mean, you probably could have gone faster at some points. You probably would have gone slower at some points, but overall, I think 3 miles is a pretty conservative guess about how you could have done. So you would have needed 127 hours. No, yeah, 127 hours at 3 miles an hour to get to 380 miles. You had 146 hours left until the record time. So it would have been 127 hours of moving time. And about 3 hours of sleep a night for 6 nights. And I just remember, I mean, and I totally, like, I never even got to close to where you got mentally and sleep wise. And so I can't, like, I gave up way before that, but it would have been like a week of misery, unlike anything you would have ever experienced before. Physically, I think it would have been, it's theoretically possible that you could have done that, but it just would have.
Does that include because I always calculated like 1 hour turnaround for the breakfast to
Yeah.
get ready and go to sleep.
No, it doesn't include anything. It's basically like you're either sleeping or you're moving.
Yeah.
So you would have had to eat on the walk. You would have had to not be changing shoes or clothes or whatever, except when you slept for 3 hours or whatever. You would have been able to or you could have moved for 6 hours and slept for one, moved for 6 hours and slept for one. So it would have been torturous, and you might have. I mean, part of what your crew does or is supposed to do is to keep you alive. We talked about this on the trail. Like if you die, it's our fault. And so, if you got to that point, then you would think that we, especially your mom, but all of us would have been like, no, you can't do this anymore. Like, stop. But, theoretically, it would have been a terrible, terrible 6 days, but still possible at that point. And that was what I wanted to communicate that to you just so that because I felt, yeah, when in your thinking in your notice that you posted, it was like, well, the crew and I talked about this and we calculated it wouldn't be possible. And I don't think that's entirely accurate, but I wanted to give you the information so that you could make that decision, but ultimately that decision would be yours. And I wish I had that. I wish I had that in front of you in the moment, so I could have communicated that to you and tried to do a better job of getting you to think about what it would take, but also what you put into this for the last 7 years of your life, and then with the mindset, with the goal of either continuing for one more segment or one more day or whatever, or for you to be like, okay, I know all that, I have this information, I'm comfortable stopping, I want it, we're done here, because it just seemed very it seemed really rambly in the moment, and kind of a unproductive, incoherent conversation. Not to put that on you, but just for all of us, it was just like a kind of confused mindset.
I mean, I was confused, that's for sure.
And understandably so.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. I see what you mean. You're talking about the extreme, like getting in, going to sleep just with my clothes on, just waking up and carrying on, and no prep, no feet maintenance, just seeing it through kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. My last
Easier to think about and talk about when you're not in it, obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was just gonna say my last my last days average moving miles now 2.5, 2.7, 3, 2.9, 3, 2.4, 2.7, 3.1, 2.9, 2.9. So I mean, it was getting slower, but
We're getting slower, yeah, but still close to 3. And if you take out the fidgets,
yeah, yeah. I think that's something I look back on is basically not getting to the point where just being efficient with those crew crossings from the start and not falling, because I definitely feel I fell into bad habits, and falling into those bad habits. I kind of totally accept what you're saying, but for me to change my entire mindset and approach to, oh, what, so now I just sleep. All I do is take my shoes off, during the attempt. I wish I could have shifted my approach, like that. But I think in hindsight, it would have been better to start not sleep with my, not prepare for bed and do any kind of maintenance, but just bring my non-moving hours times down, bring my sleep time up, and therefore my pace as well. And yeah. All right. Well, you know what? That's why I wanted you on here, because I wanted to hear those kind of comments. And that's cool, because you pull out more from someone that way than just agreeing with them. So what I'll do, thanks everyone for listening. I'll stop the conversation. I'm just going to call you on WhatsApp and listen to the stuff that you can't say on camera. So thanks everyone for listening. That was Corey Nunlist and Kristian Morgan, and thank you.
go outside.